The Hollies are one of Britain's best loved groups. Their soaring, distinctive harmonies, brilliantly crafted songs, and cultivated musicianship, plus that extensive catalogue of hits, has endured the longevity of one of the greatest pop groups ever. From The Air That I Breathe, Jennifer Eccles, remember On a Carousel, Bus Stop, another one, and the beautiful Carrie Ann. Yes, some of the best loved pop songs of all times. The Hollies will be in Melbourne in February next year. My special guest is drummer and original member of the Hollies, Bobby Elliott. Bobby, welcome in.
Hey, good day, Leigh. Good to be here.
Great to have you with us, pal. Thank you very much for joining us today. You're telling me off air the weather over there is very cool, very cold. Snow is predicted. In Melbourne, it's very hot.
Yeah. Yeah, we got winter time and we're keeping our fingers crossed so we don't get snowed in. But it's all right at the moment. We can get out and about, but British winter time, a bit clammy and cold.
How did the name Hollies come about?
Buddy Holly. We used to tease people because we'd started around Christmas had just finished and the Christmas decorations were still up, and we were trying to think of a name. This guy wanted to introduce us, and we said, the Hollies. And it wasn't actually to do with the Christmas decorations. It was Buddy Holly, because Buddy had been a big influence on all the bands, a lot of British bands and the northern bands, and the Beatles, and along with the Elliott brothers and Little Richard. So it was just quick. You need a name. I'm going to introduce you. We just formed. The band had just recently been formed, and that was it. And it stuck. The Hollies.
But before you joined the Hollies, you'd played in a few bands, hadn't you?
Played in quite a few bands. Tony Hicks, my colleague in the band, and another original member. Tony and I had a band called the Dolphins, and he was 14 and I was 18 or 19, I think. And we were like apprentices through the day and playing at night. And we earned quite a favourable reputation throughout the north of England. And eventually we formed up with Alan Clark and Graham Nash in Manchester. And Ron Richards, our producer, saw us working down the Cavern Club in Liverpool, and invited us down to Abbey Road Studios, or EMI Studios, as it was known in those days. And we started making records, and we never stayed, just went on. I mean, we've toured every single year since that 1963. We've been on the road every year without fail. We've never gone away. We've had changes within the band. People have, jumped ship and joined and whatever, but Tony and I and the rest of the guys have been going all this time. So,
Bobby, you're in your 70s. How do you keep? How do you keep it up?
Hard to believe.
Yeah, it is. In your 70s, how do you keep going like that?
Well, it's when we do work, it's fun. I mean, we don't. It's not solid work, although we have a hell of a lot of work coming up next year in Germany and over with you guys, and the Germany and Holland as well. But the band are all good guys. It's like a family, but the crew as well are part of the setup. And usually when we get into a theatre, it's hours for the day. There's no other acts on, so there's this sort of usually get laughter backstage and a camaraderie that I think reflects once the band is on stage. I think it projects into the audience, and it's fun and it's real. And I hope long may it continue. I mean, it's amazing that we've been going all these years.
Let me take you back to the age of 10. You discovered jazz around the age of 10 or 11, and then that, I suppose, was going to influence you into becoming a drummer. Tell us about those days.
Well, I had an Uncle Terry who'd been in the RAF. He was part of the ground crew, and he looked after Lancaster bombers. In fact, I'm looking now at a model Spitfire that he made out of scraps of wood during the war, and it's the best model you'd ever see of a Spitfire. Uncle Terry would sit me down next to his record player, and he'd play me Glenn Miller records. As you say, I was about 10 or 11. And one particular one was, I think, St. Louis Blues March, which featured marching drums in a way, a swinging marching drum. And that took my fancy, and I moved on from that as the years went on. I got into people like Gene Krupa, the drummer, and then Jerry Mulligan and Chet Baker, and then moved on to Thelonious Monk. And I started playing jazz in my teens. Just shortly after I'd left school, there was one or two local jazz clubs up here, and I wanted to be a jazz drummer. But then I met Tony Hicks, and after playing in small jazz clubs where you had about 50 people, looking cool and tapping the fingers, he said, well, why do we... There's a gig on Saturday afternoon, a box session down the Nelson Imperial Ballroom. And I went down there and played this rock and roll stuff that, I thought was like a piece of cake. And there were like 200 or 300 girls there, all standing around the front. I thought, well, it's a no-brainer, this. I mean, I've got sort of bored old jazz people, like, drinking pints and smoking cigarettes. And here we have, people who want to hear the music I'm playing. So I'm going to play. It's rock and roll for me.
Entertaining those young ladies.
The nice young ladies, yeah.
And of course, those early days, you had homemade brushes and sticks, and even played on tins.
Oh yeah, you're right. Mum had a grocer's shop at Pike Hill, and it was a bungalow shop, but my bedroom was a little dormer bedroom above the shop, and I used to drag those sort of biscuit tins, Cadbury's Roses tins, and candy tins and whatever. And I had a Meccano set, so this is early days, and I'd make brushes out of copper wire and insulation tape, and I'd borrow sort of paintbrush handles from the art class at Nelson Grammar School. So it was a DIY thing to start with. But once I got serious, I borrowed money off Dad and got a proper drum kit, and it was I was playing, as I say, jazz, rock, and then I turned pro with Tony joined the Hollies before me, and they were earning a pittance. They'd made a first record and they didn't have much money, and the Dolphins had folded. But Tony phoned up. He said, "Hey, there's a professional job with Shane Fenton and the Fentones." Now, this guy, Shane Fenton, later became Alvin Stardust. Mm-hmm. And I joined them for about 3 or 4 months until I could move into the Hollies. But that was a great experience. They were great guys and good players, and they were pros, whereas I was a little bit, a young guy coming from the sticks up north. But it was the best experience I could have had, and then I joined the Hollies and started making records with those guys.
Bobby, you mentioned earlier the Abbey Road studios. That was about 1963, wasn't it? When you guys went in there with your humble guitars and your amps and so on.
It was 1963.
Yeah.
And the Beatles had been in there the year before. So
how exciting was that for you?
There still are.
Was that exciting?
And we'd be in there maybe in Studio 2, and the Beatles would be across the corridor at Studio 3, or
really?
vice versa.
Yeah.
So we've been working with the Beatles quite a lot. George Martin was their producer, of course.
Yes.
Ron Richards, who was George's, who worked with Ireland and later on with George. So it was like quite a close-knit community. And we'd meet in the canteen downstairs, or we'd see, the guys, the Beatles, maybe after hours down the various clubs in the West End there.
Nash left you, of course, in 1968, and he went on to become Crosby, Stills and Nash.
Yeah, that's true. He left. His final gig was at the London Palladium with us, and I know the exact date because it was my birthday, December 8th, 1968. We had worked in the States a hell of a lot then, and we met a lot of American musicians and artists. And we knew Stephen Stills and David Crosby and Mamas and Papas, Joni Mitchell. We met them all over there. But Graham had split with his wife over here, and that encouraged him to almost want a new life anyway. And he left, as I say, at the end of '68. So in 1969, he set up house with Joni Mitchell in San Francisco. I remember the first time Graham met Joni. We were in Ottawa in Canada, and I went into the... we were leaving the following day, and he sat on the bed with Joni, and there's an acoustic guitar at the side of the bed, and Graham said to Joni, play Bobby that song that you played me. And she went, I look at life from both sides now, da 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 da.
Wow.
And it was Both Sides Now. She'd just written it, and wow. I said,
what a story.
And we were leaving. They stayed there that night. It was a day off. The band were leaving for Winnipeg. So, and our road manager was shouting that the car was there, so I had to leave him there. And I shouted, oh, great, we could record that, just like look through any window, and legged it down the corridor. So it's all a bit flippant, but Joni, wow, yeah, she was a lovely girl.
That's just a brilliant story, a really great story. What's
It's
your
true.
favourite?
Yeah,
Have you got a
yeah.
favourite song?
In fact, it's in the book. I've just completed a book called, working title, It Ain't Heavy, It's My Story, My Life and the Hollies.
And it's out
I've
now.
done 75,000 words, and I'm trying to find a publisher, so
Well,
there you go.
we'll have to look out for that one. What's your favourite Hollies song?
I've got to go for, I'm torn between a rocker, which is Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress,
Yep.
or He Ain't Heavy Is My Brother, because when we do that in the show, sometimes I can't see if the light's spreading to the audience. Sometimes I can see people being quite emotional about it. You know, it's affected maybe in different ways. So they're a couple of big songs. But The Air That I Breathe, that's a nice one to have around. And then Bus Stop. Bus Stop's a classic. I like Bus Stop, written by a Manchester boy called Graham Goulman. Yeah.
Well, I was a
Carry On.
I was a DJ in 1965. I started in radio, and of course your hits were all around at that time, and we used to have a lot of fun playing those as DJs. We used to call ourselves in those days.
Yeah. Well, we've got a lot to thank Australia for, because we had a song called Too Young to Be Married that was an album track everywhere else, but you guys plucked it off the album, and it was a #1 record for us.
Became a big hit. My word,
my word. That's wonderful, and it's a joy to do it on stage, because it's it gets you feel the warmth come from the audience, and that was written by Tony Hicks. It's written by my brother-in-law, as I call him.
Bobby, you're coming down to Melbourne. You'll be here in Melbourne on the in February, the 21st of Feb at the Gold Coast. Then you're coming down to Hamer Hall here on the 20th, Wednesday, the 20th of February. Hamer Hall, Victorian Arts Centre. Now bookings are 1300 182 183, 1300 182 183. Bobby, great to have you with us today, pal. Thank you very, very much. All the best with your trip, and we'll look forward to seeing you down here in Melbourne.
Oh, thank you, Lee. I've enjoyed it. Thanks, mate.
Take care, pal. Okay, bye-bye.
All the best.